Check. I see chairs.
No, is it the chair? Look at the table. The table.
Well, when they sit down, then you will get to well.
Yeah, but the table is start. Look at the left side, look at the right side.
I'll check it.
The right side is flat.
Check one. Check, check.
Okay. Good morning to the viewers and listeners out there. Welcome to our weekly media Sunday morning conference, media conference. For the year, this is our second media conference. Last week Sunday we had one. It's a series of weekly conferences that the opposition will be holding, as the official opposition will be holding, to to bring and highlight certain things that would have happened in the week, and to keep this government in check. As you know, we have always said, as the opposition, we will account and hold this government to account, whether in and out of Parliament. So today, we're out of Parliament, but we'll hold the government to account. As you know, for this week, there are several issues that has transpired over the week. I am joined this morning. I am David Lee, the Member of Parliament appointed peer, also Deputy Political Leader and Chief Whip. Next to me, I have joining me today on the media conference is my colleague, the MP for Tabaquite, Anita Haynes, who also shadows, along with myself, the energy portfolio, and Ms. Haynes also shadows the education portfolio, and along with myself, we also do the works and transport portfolio. So we're here this morning to bring and ask certain questions to the population and this government of what is really going on in the energy sector. As the country would have been well aware, on Monday and into Tuesday morning, the Minister of Finance, along with the Minister of Energy, would have held a press conference about a patriotic OW/OWTU deal, again, where they rejected it. And then you saw a couple days later, the Minister of Finance coming out, making a statement 2 days later saying that they will give the OWTU/patriotic 15 more days to come back to the government with hopefully a better deal, or to be able to clarify certain things on their financing. So we are a bit at a loss. I know the country is at a loss because, let me backtrack a bit. This whole issue with the whole Petrotrin refinery and OWTU and patriotic and this present government, and you have three players in this present government, in this whole patriotic debacle. You have the Minister of Finance, you have the Minister of Energy, Franklin Can, you have the Prime Minister, and you have Mr. Stuart Young, also somewhere there in the mix. So one will recall, and I want to ask the country, and I want to ask squarely to this government, really and truly, are you mamagayan the country, the population, OWTU, the workers, and the patriotic company, and the whole issue of the sale of the refinery to patriotic/OWTU? One will recall back in September 20th, 2019, when OWTU had put in they was considered the preferred bidder, had put in their bid, and the Minister of Finance came into Parliament with a hue and a cry and a song and a dance saying that how they were the preferred bidder, OWTU, and the offer that they had put on the table, they were going to make them a better offer. And the better offer back in September 2019 was, by the Minister of Finance, a 3-year moratorium. So the OWTU patriotic had 3 years before they start paying anything on the deal, and then they would have given them 10 years to pay off the $700 million US. So that wasn't back in September 2019. Well, one would remember sometime at the ending of 2019, we had a by-election. We had a local general election. And just before the local general election, this government, led by Prime Minister Keith Rowley, dangled in front of the country and in front of OWTU another carrot about they were the best bidder, and it is in good hands to have the refinery be sold to local people, and OWTU was experienced. They had put in an excellent bid. Now, let us fast track that now to where we are. Just before the general election in August 2020, Again, the government, led by the Honorable Prime Minister Keith Christopher Rowley, dangle in the population and dangle in front of the population, OWTU, and all the past workers that somewhere close to election, again, OWTU Patriotic was the best bidder and their best deal, and somewhere they gave the country and the population that they would have gotten the refinery just before general election. So again, we see twice the local general election of 2019 and then the general election of 2020, where this government has dangled in front of the population the sale of the refinery to OWTU. Now, who is really fooling who? And we ask, the opposition keeps asking that question. Why is this government, led by the Prime Minister, keep dangling and fooling the population and Mr. Roger about the sale of the refinery to them? Now, what you saw this week, let me go to October 31st. October 31st was the deadline where OWTU had to submit their final presentation, their final bid. And they submitted the bill on October 31st. They kept the deadline. And then what happened, less than 24 hours, the Minister of Energy, Franklin Kahn, came out in public and said their offer on October 31st was rejected. It wasn't sufficient, it wasn't good enough, and they wouldn't, literally OWTU would not get the refinery. What happened 2 days later, or a couple of days later, the Prime Minister comes out and says, again, they're going to give them 1 month for the evaluation team to reevaluate or evaluate the offer that OWTU had submitted on October 31st. So October 31st, OWTU submitted their final bid. Less than 24 hours, the next day, Franklin Kahn, the Minister of Energy, rejects that offer. A couple of days later, the Prime Minister comes and says he will give an extra month, a month thereabout, for the evaluation team to evaluate the same offer that OWTU had submitted on October 31st. Now, what has happened since then? What has happened this week, on Monday, according to a Franklin Kahn press conference on Tuesday this week, with the Minister of Finance, he said that after the evaluation team met, evaluated OWTU's offer, the cabinet met this week, they reject the offer. So on Tuesday morning at 11 a.m., they had a press conference by the Minister of Energy and the Minister of Finance rejecting OWTU's final offer. OWTU, on a press conference on the same day on Tuesday, said that he had submitted a response approximately close to midnight, outlining certain things, seeking clarification, and asking the government to hold their hand in making any public announcements there, because then, let us meet so we can add some clarity to their letter that they submitted around 6 p.m. to OWTU on Monday afternoon. What has happened? On Thursday, according to another press conference or a release by the Minister of Finance, says that Cabinet reconvened and Cabinet is now giving OWTU offer a further 15 days to evaluate. Now, bear in mind, tomorrow, Monday, is the by-elections of 5 electoral districts in Trinidad and the THA elections in Tobago. And we are asking, the opposition is asking this country and the population, stop being fooled by this government led by Keith Christopher Rowley. He is making a mockery of us. He's making a mockery of our energy sector. And it is time we say enough is enough. So we, the opposition, is asking here this morning to tell this country, Prime Minister, come clean with the refinery, come clean with your energy, the energy, because you have decimated the energy sector. Come clean and tell its population what is the true story of this refinery. Are you going to sell the refinery to OWTU/Patriotic based on the offer that they have submitted, based on over the last 24 months of negotiations? OWTU, you would have heard they spent millions of dollars putting together a business plan, meeting with international players. They would have spent a lot of money. And I want to ask Prime Minister Rowley, what is the true story? Now, I want to say what has happened this week has directly to link to the elections tomorrow. Somehow, one would have asked, why would this government on Tuesday come out with the sale or rejection of OWTU offer on Tuesday? Why would they do that? Why would they take that risk with a few days before elections? Now, that's a question this country has to ask Prime Minister Rowley. Now, what would have happened in our view? There was a lot of backlash that happened by coming out on Tuesday, the Minister of Energy and the Minister of Finance. And what has happened now, you see the Prime Minister and the Cabinet running on Thursday to say they will give the OWTU deal another 15 days to evaluate. What will happen in 15 days, I want to ask the population. The only thing that will happen in 15 days is tomorrow's election. That's the only thing that will happen after 15 days. So this government the population has to not be fooled by this government. We are being fooled, we are being considered, they're mamagaing us, and we are saying it's time to stop that narrative by this government. Come clean with this population. There's a lot of lack of accountability and transparency that is happening with that wholesale of the petroleum refinery and also within our energy sector, because you would have seen Point Lisas has been decimated by this government over the last 5 to 6 years. You know, Minister Franklin Khan, really and truly, we are calling the opposition, calling for his resignation here this morning, because this country has to ask themselves, what has the Minister of Energy, Franklin Khan, over the last 5 years, what has he done other than decimate our energy sector? And nothing has worked in our energy sector. They have given no incentives over the last 5 years. What you have seen again this week is a PR done by the Minister of Energy, where he comes out with the Ryder Scott report. But really and truly, when you evaluate the Ryder Scott report, that and nothing is the same. That and nothing is the same. So they are getting, the questions has been asked by this population. What our bread and butter, which is our energy sector. And if you look in the newspapers today, I can't remember which newspapers, but the central bank governor is coming out and saying, for 2021, 2022, our foreign exchange situation will be tough, will be difficult to generate foreign exchange. There's an article in the papers today. I asked the publisher to go and read that article. What also came out this week is the same Minister of Energy saying our gas productions, our energy sector will be hard this year in 2021, 2022. So I ask this government, I ask the population to ask this government, what really has this government done to our energy sector over the last 5 years? And you would have heard time and time again via Franklin Khan, via the Minister Stuart Young, saying that the opposition doesn't know anything about the energy sector. I want to say to the population here this morning, the best time that you would have seen in our energy sector, and that is what this country is living off on, all the incentives and plans that the PP government led by the Honorable Kamala Prasad-Bissessar would have put in place between 2010 to 2015, which is bearing fruits today. And this is what the country really, the residuals the country is living off here today. And this government, for the last 5, 6 years, from 2015 to present, has done nothing but decimate our energy sector. So I don't think I want to ask my colleague, Ms. Haynes, if she has anything to add that I might have missed on the energy sector. But so I turn over to Anita right now, the MP for Tabaquite.
Thank you very much, Chief Whip, for a very comprehensive review of the sad state of our energy sector, very worrying state of our energy sector today. I am here primarily to discuss the recently concluded, the recently heard Joint Select Committee on Social Services and Public Administration, where we got some damning new information about the state of our education sector. So, as you would have just heard from my colleague, MP David Lee, our energy sector, which is our bread and butter, how we survive today, is in shambles. And we also have an administration by their progressively backward policies disadvantaging an entire next generation of Trinidadians and Tobagonians. So I want to start off, like my colleague did, with some background information. Now, we are very aware that COVID-19 is a global pandemic and poses serious challenges. But I've made the point before and I'll make it again. No administration, no government on earth needed a pandemic to let them know that technology was required for education in 2020, 21, and beyond. So we're looking now at, in April of 2020, a previous Minister of Education telling us that there were 60,000 students without devices. By the end of the year, again, an election period took place, and we had a new Minister of Education. And then you saw a drive to get corporate sponsors for devices. We've made the point before and we'll make it again. Had the laptop program been continued from 2010, that was put in place 2010 to 2015, we would have been in a much different place come 2020 when the pandemic hit. There would have been students who automatically would have been in a program to have access to devices. But that program was scrapped without reason. We would have been told that there was a cost factor associated, but if you check the budgets, between $5 and $6 billion was always allocated to the Ministry of Education. So we do not accept that money was the issue. It was just a lack of ideas and an unwillingness to allow equitable access to technology across our education sector. And now we move to the GSE that we heard last week. Last week we were told that over 50,000 students, approximately, are not accessing our virtual learning platforms. Let that sink in. The population needs to be aware that these are the students that they've counted thus far who have not accessed virtual learning platforms since last year. This does not incorporate, as far as I'm aware right now, students who may have logged in but do not log in consistently. So we are looking at a new generation of Trinidadians and Tobagonians who are going into the future without accessing basic primary and secondary education. While our conversation around the education sector has been primarily focused around devices, we as a country have to be aware of whether or not our stakeholders are paying attention to what goes beyond access to a device, which includes connectivity. Both myself, MP Lee, and a number of others are faced with several constituents who, while they may be given a donated device, they have no connectivity. So students in rural communities are further disadvantaged because even if you have a device, you still cannot access the learning platforms because you're not connected to the internet. We would have been told in the budget debate, very big announcement, MiFi on its way. We are now at the end of January, with no accountability whether or not anything has been given out, any new students connected, because based on the data that we've been given by that Joint Select Committee, students are still being left off of the online learning platforms. You go beyond connectivity and you ask about standardization. Some schools are equipped, very equipped to move onto an online platform and serve their students well, but others are finding difficulty in meeting what is needed for a standardized access to education at this time. And so we're asking the Ministry of Education. I went back to the Minister of Education's budget contribution. And as with the energy sector, so too with the education sector, the deception is falling apart now. Because there was a lot of pains to say things are working well. We saw a lot of pictures of devices being donated. We saw a lot of handshaking, happy students. And now we're being told 50,000 students not being able to access the education system. But we're also being told that students are now dropping out of school to assist families with working because of the progressive hardship of unemployment and the overall social ills that we're facing as a nation. The Minister of Education acknowledged in October of last year that we needed to put in place a social safety net to capture students, the widening gap of vulnerable students, which would have taken into consideration these students who are dropping out of school to now become income earners, wage earners for their family, whatever means they can find. Have we heard anything about the social safety net? Has there been any further discussion about no student left offline? Because we as a population, those of us who represent constituencies, day after day, we've been being met with parents who are not only asking for devices, but things like printing of packages or getting the schoolwork back to the teachers. These are things that people are finding very difficult to access. Most MPs' offices, and especially UNC MPs, have now facilitated the printing of packages, allowing internet spaces for students to submit their SBAs, but we cannot continue in this piecemeal fashion. The education sector, if we look very closely at it, is collapsing around us. We are being told that there's a hybrid system now, that we're looking at both virtual learning and paper-based learning. But you could not have taken a paper-based format and just put it online and expect it to work. We also saw at the end of the last year the entire CXC scandal, where we had students who were consistently performing at a high standard, receiving grades of 5, 6, and ungraded. That is still a matter that is before us as we now prepare another set of students to face those same exams without correcting the issues that we were faced with last year. And I cannot explain the injustice of a system where you can put in all of the work, you can put in all of the study hours, and because you are not sure about the system in which the exam will take place, you can be go from having grade 1s the year before to a grade 5 or 6. And then that leaves you out of accessing tertiary education, it leaves you out of scholarships, and so many other issues. So today, we are calling on the Minister of Education to come clean with the public of Trinidad and Tobago, to give us the data as you have it, to also be frank about the fact that you all have not been collecting accurate data over time, and therefore your policy making is flawed because it is based on subjective analysis rather than any qualitative data. And so today we can be told 60,000 has laptops. Tomorrow we'll be told 30,000 have laptops, and then the next day we'll told 50,000 are not online. As a population, do we have any idea what we're doing? The Ministry of Education, the education sector, would have been allocated $6 billion in the last budget debate. So money is being spent. The question we have to ask now is, are our children being educated? Because while money is being allocated, we have no accountability, no transparency in another sector, and this is just the P&M way of managing our sector, which is that we're being told, don't ask questions, everything is fine, all is going well, until we realize 5, 6 years from today, that we have an entire generation not equipped to face the world of work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anita. Just to add a little bit about Anita in the education, as far as an opposition MP in my constituency, where's the equity and the fairness of the distribution of those laptops or devices that the Ministry of Education would have distributed either via corporate citizens, corporate sponsors, etc. I'm not aware of any school in my constituency of Pointe-a-Pierre receiving any of those devices or the students, no matter how small it is. And also, you know, my colleague Anita and all our other UNC opposition members, MPs. And so we are calling on this government, we're calling on the Minister of Education to come clean and produce, you know, and share with the country, share with the population how these devices have been distributed throughout the schools and throughout the students throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Before I close, to take questions from the media that is present here, you know, I just want to touch back on the energy sector, that this government has been running the energy so bad. Our crown jewel company of NGC, National Gas Company, for the first time in its history has declared a loss under this P&M administration, under this Rowley-led government. And that is the state of play within our energy sector, where our crown jewel, one of our key companies, state companies that used to bring dividends to the country, to the taxpayers, to be able to do things for this country, for the population, has now in a lost position. And that is the state of play with this Minister of Energy, Franklin Can. So I am saying Franklin Can really should resign. The opposition is calling for his resignation. And as you're well aware, On Wednesday, in the Parliament, we'll be debating a motion of no confidence on the Minister of National Security, Stuart Young, and you would have seen he has already failed because yesterday he has changed the whole exemption process. So that's an admission of failure by the Minister of National Security, Stuart Young. So I would say no more. I would leave that for our debate to be held, which will be held on Wednesday at 10 a.m. in the Parliament, and we'll take that fight in the Parliament at 10 a.m. This present Wednesday. Again, before we close, tomorrow is our election. We have 5 by-elections. We have the TH elections in Tobago. I am asking the population to come out tomorrow in your numbers, especially in the 5 by-elections in Trinidad, and really send a strong message to this PNM-led government by Prime Minister Rowley that enough is enough. The population is fed up of being fooled and lied to, and we need to send a strong message tomorrow, especially in Alice Glen, Montcoco, where it's considered to be a strong PNM whole. And I'm asking the population of that district, Alice Glen, Montcoco, Point Forte, I am begging on the people of Point Forte, please send a message to this PNM-led government of what they're doing to OWTU, our refinery, our decimation of our energy sector. Point Forte is a hub energy area, and we need to send that strong message to this PNM government tomorrow. So come out early and come out and do not take the elections tomorrow very lightly. So I ask the population to come out strongly tomorrow. I thank you. I will open the floor for any questions that the media would like to ask at this point in time. Any questions? No?
As it relates, sorry, good morning, Melissa Doughty, Trinidad and Tobago Newsday. As it relates, Ms. Haynes, to the education system, you spoke on having equity, etc. And we live in a world now where automation and digitization is growing rapidly and widely. And we see that drive taking place in other spaces and in other societies. How do you think that the impact, or what do you think the impact of this is going to be on that going forward? Because I mean, that is the future. Robotics, automation is the future.
Correct.
What do you think the impact of that is going to be?
I think, like I started, we are in a very scary space right now as a nation, because we are seeing now that we will have students woefully unprepared. As you rightfully said, automation, technology is the future, and we absolutely did not need COVID-19 to teach us that lesson. And this is the point that I try to make over and over, the People's National Movement inherited a laptop program in 2015. Now, even if you felt like there were issues with that program, the responsible, sensible thing to do would have been to assess, tweak, and move forward. What we actually had happening was just scrapping the program, and then you had the Minister of Education formally telling us that he's putting desktops in schools. And so I remember as a senator asking, if you are not aware of what's the difference between a desktop and a laptop, they are fundamentally different devices. And it was dismissed then. So we had an administration that from 2015 to 2020 did absolutely nothing to ensure equitable access to technology for these students. And what does that mean for us as a nation? It means students who are already in a vulnerable space, whether it be by their socioeconomic standing or whatever, you're already in a vulnerable space in terms of having access. You are disadvantaged in a system because you have to use the desktop in the school, whereas another student has a laptop, has whatever technology at home to continue learning, and has familiarity with technological spaces. Now, COVID-19 happens, and the entire world is told, move online. Something that we already knew was going to happen before the pandemic. A lot of changes had to be made quickly, but this, in my opinion, is not one of them. We did not need to be here. So I think we are going to see a lot of students being gravely disadvantaged. We may also see a widening in the income and wealth distribution, because those who have will continue to be able to access and have more. And those of us who don't have will then be scrambling to just make ends meet. And that's what we're seeing with these numbers here, because students who are dropping out of school on virtually, it's one probably because they were not able to access it in the first place. So you say, why bother? So you get the papers, you can't get it back to the schools, and then the barriers become fortified, and you have more dropouts, and we will probably, as a nation, unless this is fixed in a very effective and efficient manner, quickly and without all the extra PR bells and whistles, but you see a whole of government approach, you see people actually working to make sure students are in school, we will see Trinidad and Tobago with a widening income and wealth distribution gap, and more persons being unable not just to access technology, but even to function in an increasingly technological world.
And in terms of we see or we hear of the reopening of schools on February 8th,
yeah.
What is your take on that? Do you think schools are prepared for that in the world of COVID?
Well, we have to be prepared, right? We have to be prepared. We have to move forward, taking, of course, first and foremost, the priority being safety and security, so that to make sure our students can safely be able to go back out to schools. But as we go forward, I made the point yesterday at an event, the government also has to put more consideration into their policy making, because right now you have families, you have students at home, parents more than likely back out to work. In most cases in a Trinidadian household, you would have older students supervising younger children in the household. That's just how we can adapt. That's the way our society works. You take Form 5s out of the homes to go to school, which I have no real issue with once they can safely do so. But you create a further problem for parents at home. Now, I am not saying this to say that the government must solve all of these issues, but the government must consider all of these issues when making policies. And that my initial point about whether or not there's a disconnect between the Ministry of Education and educators and the stakeholders, including the parents, I think very much so. Because when we make decisions, when policymakers make decisions, you're doing so for real people who live very real lives and have different issues facing, and so you cannot have a one-size-fits-all policy. You must be able to adapt and cut and paste so that we are getting maximum benefit for all of our students and our families.
And do you think that devices and connectivity are main issues to be solved going forward, as you rightly said, in a growing technological world?
I think devices are the first step, and a step that could have been solved had the laptop program continued. So that is a policy decision by the PNM that has us solving something that ought to have been solved well in advance. Connectivity, very big issue. Again, we have been hearing about, I don't know if you all recall, in 2015, there's a photo of Minister Hines and Rowan Sinanan, and they're sitting on a bus talking about Wi-Fi connectivity on buses. That was 2015. Nothing in 2016, nothing in 2017, nothing in 2018, nothing in 2019, COVID-19 2020, and then you were hearing about connectivity and MiFi. So, I mean, the reason we're going to keep raising the MiFi situation is, are we going to go 2021, 22, 23, and it's one announcement after another, but no connection for our citizens. So yes, devices, connectivity, that's the first step, and that is what's very scary for Trinidadians and Tobagonians, because we are stuck and spending an inordinate amount of time on what is probably the easiest problem in this thing to solve, because then you have to talk about standardization of curriculum, making sure that we are not just taking what's on paper and moving it online, but we're optimizing so that our students are competitive in the future, because that is what the education system is meant to do. It's not to just funnel students through and get passes after passes, but to make sure your students are equipped to be not just functional, but can excel in the future. And right now, quite frankly, we're not doing that.
Mr. Lee, in terms of the energy sector, you spoke about the destination and the policy is not doing what it's supposed to do for the sector. Two-pronged question in terms of, we saw a drive before towards cleaner and more renewable sources of energy. How do you see that playing itself out in a world where the reliance on oil and gas is no longer strong, particularly with what has happened with COVID-19? How do you see that playing
Well,
out? Sorry, and what role do you think COVID played in terms of, you spoke about the desolation, and you spoke about the government's role in that. But what do you think, or how do you think COVID played a role in that as well, or if you even think COVID played a role?
Let me take your second question first. Long before COVID started in, let's say, early 2020, all right? The strain came out somewhere at the ending of December out of China as what is out there internationally. Long before that, for the last 4 years prior to that, this government has failed in really bringing good policies in our energy sector. Budget after budget, they would have mentioned incentivize the energy sector to the energy companies, and that has not happened. For the last 5 years, they have been talking about deep water bids. You again this week, you know, there's another release by the Minister of Energy talking about shortly they will have deep water bid rounds happening, and really and truly, so that this government really has not done anything prior to COVID in the energy sector to really give it some oomph, to give it to carry it forward in the next 5 years. What we are really living off is the plans and the incentives that would have been put in place by the PP government, and what is now bearing fruits over the last 3 to 4 years. That is what the country is living on. Without that planning by the PP government, the state of play now would have been much worse as it is, worse than what it is today. So that going forward, Franklin Can, as Minister of Energy, really has done nothing in our energy sector other than just lip service, and you know, and it's really time for him to go. So bearing what is, you see, this government wants to blame everything on COVID. So yes, in the early part of this year, you would have seen the prices of oil and gas would have dropped tremendously in the first part of the first 6 months of this year, of 2020. But you see they are now on a rebound. So that, are we catering for that rebound? Because what has happened with this government for the last 5 years, all that this Minister of Finance and the Minister of Energy has been hoping is that the energy prices would have kept rising, and that would have been their be-all and end-all, you know. And you would have looked at all the companies that would have been closed down in Point Lisas. I mean, the list of companies, I have it here, that under their watch, over the last 4 years, 3 years especially, Mittal was the first to go, Yara, Nutrient Plants, Titan, all under this present government. And yet all before COVID, and yet they say they are the experts of the energy sector. Now, heaven help us, if they consider themselves the expert, and one has, the population just has to look at what has happened to our energy sector in the last 5 years, starting with Petrotrin, which has been a foreign exchange earner, and now we are suffering for foreign exchange. So that what is really what is happening with this government? They lack ideas, they lack plans. They are hoping for you know, I don't know what they hope. You know, we don't know what they're hoping for. But they need to stop fooling this population, and the population should say to this government, enough is enough, and come out tomorrow where the democratic right is in place tomorrow to vote against this PNM government in all the by-elections, and I would even say in THA elections too, so that we need to send a strong message by the population to this government, and we can do this tomorrow. As far as the renewable question, again, if you go back to all the budget statements by the Minister of Energy, if you go back to the finance books where they allocate funding, you would see year after year it's just lip service in the renewable energy sector. It took them nearly a whole year to distribute 2 bulbs. You remember that promise a year ago about 2 bulbs to be energy efficient in your household? It took this government nearly 12 months to distribute two light bulbs, 2 LED light bulbs to the households of this nation. And yet, it's another mama guy, it's another mamagism, it's another broken promise, it's just fooling the population. And we are saying, the opposition is saying, enough is enough. Okay? That's it. Thank you so much. We try to keep